Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the new improved January 2025 edition of Milwaukee Baseball. As we huddle for warmth during these long winter months, we ought to take a look back and a look ahead. We're going to look ahead today to what might be expected from the 2025 version of the Milwaukee Brewers as they attempt to defend their National League Central title. And we'll then take a look back at the only professional baseball team in Milwaukee that finished first in their league every year they existed. I'm talking, of course, about the 1944 Milwaukee Chicks. They only existed for that 1 year in the All American women's professional baseball world, but they finished first. And we'll look back at when and how they came to be and why they only lasted for just a single season. First, though, let's take stock of what's been going on with our current day heroes, the Milwaukee Brewers. We have to start this segment off with acknowledgement that Wednesday of this week, Mr. Baseball passed. Mr. Baseball, Milwaukee's own and beloved Bob Uecker. Bob signed with the hometown Braves in 1956, and Uecker went on to a rather pedestrian, I'd say, 6-year career with a .200 batting average and 14 homers, one of which was off Sandy Koufax, he would want me to remind you. But those numbers don't tell the tale of the man himself. Bob Uecker was one of a kind, one of the funniest guys who brought so much joy to those who knew him and to those who saw him on TV or in his films or heard him during his 54 years behind the microphone broadcasting Milwaukee Brewers baseball games. We will never forget you, Bob. And yes, I think you do deserve a seat down front in the front row where you are now. The upcoming Brewers seasons just won't be the same without you. Speaking of the Brewers, when we last saw them, they were once again disappointing their fans, falling in the wild card round of the playoffs to the New York Mets. Now, this was after a most gratifying 2024 regular season when the Crew won the National League Central easily, coasting to a 10-game margin of victory. What's happened to our boys since then? As expected, the Brewers said goodbye to their shortstop and clubhouse leader, Willie Adames. Willie signed a 7-year, $182 million contract with the San Francisco Giants. On November 4th, the Crew non-tendered club options on right-handed pitcher Colin Ray and right-handed pitcher Frankie Montas. Montas later signed a multi-year deal with the Mets. Colin Ray signed with the Chicago Cubs. On November 22nd, the Brewers non-tendered a contract to lefty Hobie Milner. They did agree to a 1-year deal with Eric Haas, who will get some playing time vacated behind the plate by free agent catcher Gary Sanchez, whose $11 million option was declined by Brewer management in yet another cost-cutting move. Finally, on December 13th, the Brewers traded star reliever Devin Williams to the New York Yankees for lefty Nestor Cortez, who will be a free agent after the upcoming season, minor league second baseman Caleb Durbin, a mid-level prospect, and some cash. Do you notice a pattern here? The organization is shedding salaries, cutting their losses both in players and in dollars. It's not very inspiring. The Athletic website came out last week with an article giving off-season grades to the moves made by all 30 Major League Baseball organizations. Their evaluation of the Brewers, they gave them a grade of C- and predicted a third-place finish for the Crew next year, behind both the Cubs and the Reds. I can't say that I disagree with that prediction. It is indeed hard to see this club defending their 2024 divisional crown next season with the current roster. One big salary they didn't get rid of is the $18 million owed this year to first baseman Rhys Hoskins, who exercised his player option to return for another $18 million next year. He didn't earn his salary in 2024, hitting a lonely 214 and striking out 149 times, much of it as the team's designated hitter. The Brewers are also betting a lot on the full return of right-handed pitcher Brandon Woodruff, who's been injured the past 2 seasons. I think it's a risky bet for a hurler coming off major shoulder surgery. If Woodruff fizzles, they may have their hands full, finishing higher than fourth in the National League Central. There's less than 6 weeks remaining now before the first spring training games, and I'll be reporting from Arizona in March. Hopefully, between now and then, the Brewers will improve their roster. They need a starting infielder on the left side, either at third base or shortstop, depending on where they play Ortiz. And they need at least one starting pitcher and a lot of bullpen depth. Can they do it? Well, in my opinion, no, not unless they loosen the purse strings. 2025 is going to be a challenge for Brewers fans, and that's for sure. Now let's do a 180 and turn the clock back, shall we? I want you to imagine it's 1944. World War II is entering its 5th year. 16 million Americans, 1 out of every 8, are serving in the armed forces, and at least as many are working in jobs related to the war effort. More than half of the Major League Baseball players are now in the armed forces. Major League Baseball is cutting back, trying to field teams of at least decent caliber at the lowest possible cost. Even the baseball itself, is now made of inferior materials, so more rubber will be available for use by our fighting servicemen. 1 year before this, Phil Wrigley, the owner of the Chicago Cubs, in trying to save the game of baseball and provide some diversion for the people on the home front, organized the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. That league initially had 4 teams: the Kenosha Comets, the Rockford Peaches, the Racine Bells, and the South Bend Blue Sox. Maybe you've seen a film you might remember called A League of Their Own. That took a comedic look at the women's professional baseball season. The league did well enough that in 1944, Wrigley expanded the effort. Whereas the first season's teams drew talent from the Chicago area, the second year saw 2 expansion teams added, the Minneapolis Millerettes and the Milwaukee Chicks, and it drew female baseball talent from around the country. The Women's Baseball League actually lasted until 1954. And so 10 years before that, Milwaukee found itself with a second professional baseball team. And in 1944, of course, there was only one baseball stadium in town, so the Chicks had to share Borchard Field with the long-established Milwaukee Brewers of the AAA American Association. What a team the Chicks turned out to be. They were managed in 1944 by future Hall of Famer Max Carey. Not so surprisingly, they led the league in stolen bases, just as Carey had done 10 times during his wonderful career with the Pittsburgh Pirates. The man who stole 738 bags in the bigs had the Chicks playing an aggressive, attacking style of baseball on the bases, and the team was regarded as the best fielding group in the league as well. The 1944 season was split into 2 halves, and the Chicks started 30-26, but they really turned it on in the second half, going 40-19 and finishing with a league-best record of 70 wins against 45 losses. The star of that Chicks team was undoubtedly 22-year-old Connie Wisniewski, known to all Chicks fans as the Polish Rifle for her amazing fastball. She not only went 23-10 with a 2.23 earned run average during the season, that was just a prelude. During the 1944 AAWPBL Championship Series, Connie started 5 games and went the distance in all of them, with a 4-1 record and an earned run average of 0.4. One can argue that this is the greatest postseason performance by any Milwaukee pitcher in the history of professional baseball, even greater than Lou Burdett in the 1957 championship season for the Milwaukee Braves. However, the Chicks' remarkable season and championship also displayed one sign of weakness. Nobody was going to their games. Whereas the Brewers were regularly drawing 3,000 fans or more to every one of their contests at Borchert Field, the Chicks averaged less than 300 fans per game. To add insult to injury, the Brewers needed Borchert Field the same week as the Women's League World Series was held, and so all 7 of the Chicks' postseason games were played at Kenosha's Lakefront Stadium. It was also said back then that the 95-cent admission charge to the Chicks' home games was partly to blame. I'm not sure if that's true, but it certainly stands as the only time a championship caliber baseball team in Milwaukee played before empty seats. And so, in 1945, just like that, the Milwaukee Chicks were gone as quickly as they'd arrived. The franchise was moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where it flourished for the next decade. Max Carey went with the team, and he eventually became the AAGBPL league president. Chicks star Connie Wisniewski went to Grand Rapids too, and there she amassed a trove of league records, earning her a justifiable reputation as one of the greatest professional women's leagues players of all time. Sadly, they're all gone now. But on June 29, 2019, Milwaukee Chicks Day was celebrated in Brewtown, and a tribute to the team can even be seen today at American Family Field. Well, next month on Milwaukee Baseball, we'll take stock of the Brewers as they open spring training, and we'll try to measure their chances in the 2025 National League Central. In March, I'll have my report from the Cactus League for you. I think that's going to be something you won't want to miss. Well, I want to thank you so much for stopping by to check out Milwaukee Baseball this month. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button at the bottom, and I really enjoy and I look forward to any of your comments below. That's about it for this month's edition of Milwaukee Baseball. I'm your host, Robert Cadera. I hope we meet again in February on our next trip around the bases. So long, everybody.